Welcome to one of our first sneak peeks behind Babysitting the Demons on Maple Street. Today I'm working on one of our Indiegogo perks, Design a Babysitter Poppet. About halfway through the film, we introduce a brief stop-motion section where our little demon on Maple Street, Adeline, introduces Darcy to her former babysitters. When trying to come up with the creepiest design for these puppets, I couldn't think of anything creepier than needle felting. So even though I had absolutely no experience needle felting, I decided that I would attempt the stop-motion puppetry myself. But instead of coming up with the designs myself, I decided to make it an Indiegogo perk. Where people could create their poppets to look like themselves, someone they love, or even someone they hate. We don't judge. In this video, I've already started on the head, made the armature, and I've begun covering it with the wool. For those of you unfamiliar with needle felting, you basically have a needle that has tiny barbs on it that mats the wool and helps you build whatever shape you want. Of course, since this is going to be a stop-motion puppet, I had to add the wire skeleton underneath. I've already made one of these puppets already, so this is my second go, and it took me in total just over an hour and 15 minutes, with the occasional pauses to try to train my new kitten that we literally got 2 days ago. This particular poppet is for an online friend of mine that you probably know in the Halloween community. She requested light pale skin, a curvy body, and of course her signature bright, beautiful auburn hair. As you can tell from the look on my face, this is my least favorite section of the poppet building, which is just covering the wire skeleton with as much wool as I can so you can't see it. On top of those who purchased this Indiegogo perk, we're also going to be designing poppets to resemble our actresses that are playing Adeline, our little demon, and Darcy, the doomed babysitter. As the time-lapse progresses, you can see how the wool starts to take shape, how it starts to become firmer each time I stab it with the needle. For those of you who are filled with pent-up rage, I cannot recommend needle felting enough because it gives you an excuse to stab something over and over and over again. Once the skeleton is fully covered and you can't see the wire anymore, I start to take the wool and sculpt it a bit more to add curves to the body. Especially since this contributor is a female and requested that her curves be represented, I really take the time to sculpt the body and add curves not only to the hips, the bust, but also the thighs to make her as voluptuous and beautiful as she is in real life. This is probably one of my favorite parts of the sculpt because you can really start to see the character come alive as you start adding those features. Like so many fiber arts, this is very time-consuming, but right now my son just started kindergarten and I'm about 2 weeks away from giving birth, so this is the perfect window of opportunity for me to try to bust out these poppets as quickly as possible before we start to attempt our stop-motion filming later this year. Now you might be wondering if I have any experience in stop-motion animation, and the resounding answer is no. However, talking with my AD, we both agreed that instead of spending thousands of dollars to pay a professional, since we want it to look very jagged and unnerving and not seamless and smooth, we wanted to try to attempt to do it ourselves. It's something I've always wanted to learn how to do, and what better excuse than putting it into your own movie. As I finish adding the curves to the body, my least favorite part has begun, and that is trying to sculpt the nose. This is easily the hardest part of the sculpt, and I cannot tell you the number of times I stabbed my finger trying to get this nose onto her face. After I struggle far too long with this nose, it's time to add a few more of the details that have to do with the storyline of the film. This, of course, includes bloody red lips and sewing the mouth shut on all of the babysitters. Now, I don't want to give away anything really of the plot, but this is a huge detail in our major reveal at the end of the film that kind of causes Darcy to run for her life from little Adeline. And it's a little sneak peek when we first see these poppets earlier in the film. My background in fiber arts is in cross stitching, so this is easily my favorite part, and I whip it out nice and fast. Then comes the time where I can finally add the head to the rest of the body and finally cover up that last little bit of wire that's been driving me crazy. I use a little bit of hot glue to secure it, and then, new kitten attack. As I was saying, once the head is finally attached, we can cover up that last little bit of wire that's been driving me crazy. Once that is covered, I like to do one last look around to make sure all the curves are right where I want them to be and there are no awkward seams happening. Especially since someone paid a decent amount of money for these poppets, I want to make sure that it looks just the way that they want them to and that they really like the end result. Fun fact, if you do want to get yourself a poppet, we are still crowdfunding since we are in demand on Indiegogo. We have a nice discount running on these poppets, and you can design them to look like yourself, someone you love, or someone you hate. Again, we don't judge. Once we use them in the film, we actually send you the poppet, so you get a screen-used prop, and it's the only screen-used prop that we are sending out to the public. As I said earlier, this particular contributor has beautiful bright auburn hair, so of course I'm adding the finishing touches to make it look just like her. One of her signature hairdos includes what I like to call the Bride of Frankenstein stripe, so I add a little bit of white to add that finishing touch to make it look just like her. And while I'll keep working on it and tweaking it as we film the stop motion section, this is the final result of one of our Design a Babysitter Poppet perks on Indiegogo.